Shedeur Sanders' oblique strain is the kind of small-sounding but strategically huge setback that can change the arc of a rookie's summer in ways that aren't obvious when you first read the injury report. On a pure box score level, he already did what a fifth-round rookie needed to do. He grabbed attention with a clean, efficient preseason start, 14 of 23, 138 yards, 2 TDs, and forced conversations that hadn't existed for him the week before. But the NFL's calendar and evaluation process are brutal. Opportunities are limited, reps are currency, and momentum is fragile. Losing prep time right now costs more than a missed practice. It costs visibility, trust-building reps with starters, and the chance to translate hype into a tangible roster move. Medical reality first. Oblique strains are notorious for being sneaky. They're not usually career-threatening, but they're uncomfortable. They flare on every throw and every rotational movement, and they can linger if rushed. Recovery windows vary with severity. A mild strain might clear in a few days to a week with rest and carefully ramped throwing, while a more significant strain can take multiple weeks of rehab and a graduated throwing program before a quarterback can function at full speed. Importantly, testing the area too early can set back progress, and because the obliques are integral to torso rotation, quarterbacks often report soreness even when structural healing has occurred. That means the coaching and medical staff will be balancing short-term desire to showcase him against long-term availability and mechanics. From an evaluation standpoint, this is bad timing. Shedeur's strengths coming out of that first game were poise, short to intermediate accuracy, and pocket composure, traits that accelerate a coach's willingness to hand a prospect more meaningful looks. The Browns have only a tiny number of live reps left in preseason before they decide which quarterbacks to keep active, who goes to the practice squad, and how to prioritize developmental reps. Missing one or two of those live opportunities sharply reduces the sample size evaluators will use to decide whether Sanders belongs above Pickett, Gabriel, or Flacco on the depth chart. In other words, his stock was rising. The injury stalls that climb at the exact moment when he needed to keep ascending. The roster calculus becomes sharper because of roster construction realities. Most teams will not carry 4 quarterbacks onto the 53-man roster unless there's a compelling reason. The Browns have veterans and draft capital invested across 4 quarterbacks, and the practical choice historically is to keep 3. Starter, experienced backup, developmental quarterback who has shown enough to warrant a roster spot, or keep 3 and stash the 4th on the practice squad if possible. Sanders' path to a 53-man spot was mostly built on seizing live game opportunities and showing consistent growth. With fewer opportunities, the Browns are more likely to default to experience, Flacco, draft pedigree, Pickett/Gabriel, or special teams insurance calculus, unless Sanders returns and looks like the same player, if not better, in the final preseason outing. What should the Browns and Shedeur do next? For the team, protect the asset. Rehabilitation must be prioritized over optics. The Browns should run a conservative, measurable return-to-throwing protocol with clear milestones. Pain-free core rotation at game intensity, full-speed intermediate throws, then situational live reps. If medical staff clear him for a limited package in the final preseason game with scripted plays that minimize full game exposure but maximize decision-making reps, that's the ideal compromise. From an evaluation perspective, coaches should also broaden their lens. Judge him not only on volume, but on quality of decision-making in each rep, footwork returning from injury, and recovery curve between practices. Those mental and mechanical indices are often more predictive than simple stat lines. For Shedeur personally, the immediate priority is rehab discipline and optics management. He should publicly communicate steady work, not alarm. The narrative swing after his debut, ad campaigns, celebrity attention, and a sudden rush of expectations works for him if he uses it as leverage for measured progression. Hurrying back and appearing half-ready would damage both his health and his credibility with coaches. Conversely, returning visibly stronger and mechanically solid within the available timeline would reinforce the he belongs argument more effectively than one more flashy preseason drive. There's also a mental PR layer to consider. Momentum in camp isn't just about tape, it's about narrative and trust. The Nike ad and national attention have elevated expectations, which can be a double-edged sword. If the Browns bench him for the next preseason game because of injury or conservative management, social media will rage about disrespect. If they rush him back and he struggles, critics will amplify perceived shortcomings and the fifth-round slide storyline. The Browns will likely try to insulate the process by carving out clear, deliberate communication, explaining their development plan, emphasizing they're protecting both the player and the team's long-term interests. Longer term, this moment doesn't kill Sanders' upside. It complicates the near term. A single injury rarely derails a career if handled properly, but missing crucial preseason reps makes him a tougher roster decision. The realistic best-case pathway now, he rehabilitates cleanly, gets a limited but productive scripted slot in the final preseason game or two, practices at near full speed for the last week, and convinces the Browns to either keep him as a third QB or protect him via the practice squad/active roster maneuvering. The worst-case pathway is that lingering soreness limits his final preseason showing, the Browns take a conservative roster approach, and he loses the momentum he'd earned, which would push his developmental timeline back a season and make practice squad or backup roles likelier. The bigger lesson for evaluators and fans is this: preseason momentum is fragile. A great half game moves a prospect from anonymity to conversation. An oblique tweak 2 days later reminds everyone how tight the margins are. For Sanders, this is a test of resilience and process more than raw ability. How he and the Browns manage the next 2 weeks, conservative rehab, targeted reps, clear communication, will determine whether last Friday's highlight tape becomes a launching pad or a warm memory. Either way, the prudent approach is obvious. Prioritize availability and long-term mechanics now, even if it means sacrificing a short-term chance to climb the depth chart. Shedeur Sanders' oblique strain is more than a minor blip. It's a real speed bump at the worst possible time. A week ago, he gave the Browns exactly what every low-drafted rookie needs: an eye-catching, pressure-filled performance on a national stage. He started unexpectedly, played nearly 3 quarters, threw 2 touchdowns, and suddenly had momentum, attention, and a convincing bit of tape to back up the hype. Now that momentum is paused, and for a player who started the summer buried on the depth chart, that pause matters. Oblique injuries are tricky. They can be day-to-day and heal quickly, or they can hang around, sap throwing strength, and make a quarterback hesitant to twist and torque through his core. Exactly the actions that make timing and accuracy click. The team called Sanders day-to-day and expects him to miss the Eagles' joint practice and likely the next preseason game. That timeline might sound short, but missing even one of the last 2 exhibition windows is significant. Cleveland only had 3 preseason games, and starters/light window reps give fringe players like Sanders their clearest path to force a roster rethink. Beyond the medical issue is the lost opportunity to build trust with the coaches and to show consistent chemistry with the first-team offense. Sanders' debut mattered because it translated practice whispers into game tape. Coaches and front offices value what they can see under pressure. Reads at the line, red zone execution, handling blitzes, and taking or avoiding turnover-worthy throws. 2 more strong preseason outings could have turned a hot afternoon into a serious argument to carry 4 quarterbacks or to push Kenny Pickett off the roster bubble. Now, evaluation falls back on a handful of plays and a lot of what-ifs. Roster math still works in Sanders' favor in a narrow sense. He's cheap, under team control for 4 years, and the Browns have a history of keeping developmental options. But financials and potential don't instantly trump experience and the coaching staff's planned pecking order. Joe Flacco remains the veteran presumed starter. Dillon Gabriel and Kenny Pickett are both in the mix when healthy. If Pickett and Gabriel return to full participation, the Browns have little incentive to shake things up based on a single preseason performance, especially if Sanders isn't available to build on it. What Sanders needs now is textbook recovery and a plan to maximize the moments he does get. That means aggressive but smart rehab, clear communication with the medical staff about throwing timelines, and mental reps. Studying the playbook, film, and situational reads so that when he returns, he doesn't need a volume of snaps to pick up where he left off. If he's healthy for the final preseason game,